The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. I'm your host, Andy MacNeil. This show is presented by Canada Sports Betting, special off-season edition of the Puck Portfolio today, Wednesday, July 3rd, just a couple of days following the frenzy that was NHL free agency day one. $1.15 billion handed out to over 100 players who found new homes on July 1st, a record setting day in the NHL. And let's start with the Edmonton Oilers because we are going to break down the fallout of all the happenings of July 1st on today's show, the winners and the losers. Won't get into everything, of course, but we will touch on a lot of the bigger stories, the bigger risers, the bigger fallers. So let's start with the Oilers. Maybe they should continue on without a general manager. They don't currently have one, following Ken Holland's departure. But CEO Jeff Jackson got to work on July 1st, signing forward Victor Arvidsson to a 2-year deal worth $4 million per season. Then Edmonton signed forward Jeff Skinner, who was recently bought out by the Buffalo Sabres, of course, to a 1-year contract worth $3 million. They also brought back Matthias Janmark, Connor Brown, Corey Perry, and Adam Henrique on reasonable deals after their strong performances throughout Edmonton's run to the Stanley Cup final. They also re-signed defenseman Troy Stetcher and signed right shot defenseman Josh Brown. The team did have to say goodbye to Warren Fogle and Vinny Desharnais, and a little bit more work has to be done to be compliant with the league's salary cap, but the Oilers are definitely better off for it. Arvidsson is a 2-time 30-goal scorer. He's coming off an injury-riddled season. You hope that he can bounce back, and all signs point to that happening, while Skinner is a 6-time 30-goal scorer, and he's just one season removed from accomplishing that feat in back-to-back campaigns. So one player, likely Jeff Skinner, is going to play with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman, while the other, Arvidsson, will skate alongside Leon Draisaitl. Great situations for both players. And yeah, the Oilers, they clearly intend on getting back to the Stanley Cup final in 2025. And it looks like they're going to be packing an even bigger offensive punch than they did in 2024, which is really scary for the rest of the NHL. Edmonton is the current favorite to win the Stanley Cup. They've got 9-1 odds over at Sports Interaction. Meanwhile, the Kings came away losers, in my opinion, after losing out on Arvidsson, who signed with the Oilers. They also lost defenseman Matt Roy for nothing, adding to a list of quality defensemen like Sean Dursey and Sean Walker that the Kings have mismanaged over the past year or so. Not to mention, and I think this is something that we can all agree with, they made the worst deal on July 1st by signing defenseman Joel Edmondson to a 4-year contract with an AAV of $3.85 million, so almost $4 million for 31-year-old Joel Edmondson, and not to mention the wasted assets in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. The Kings did sign forward Warren Fogle, the former Oiler, to a 3-year contract worth $3.5 million per year, but they were already in a tough spot. Look, they're competing with the likes of Edmonton, Vegas, even Vancouver, and they aren't doing themselves any favors these last couple of off seasons. A team that is doing themselves a big favor here, Nashville. They have added Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea to the fold here. They also signed goaltender UC Saros to an 8-year contract extension. Look, Stamkos, Marchessault, they're both long in the tooth, but the Predators, they've added some much needed firepower to their lineup as both players are proven goal scorers with a lot left in the tank. Of course, the durability of both players is going to be a bit of concern given their age, but the betting market reacted pretty positively to what Nashville did on July 1st, and rightfully so. According to the odds, the Predators have leapfrogged the Winnipeg Jets, who have so far been pretty quiet, and they are now considered the third best team in the Central Division, as their odds have moved from plus 950 to 5-1, as low as plus 330 at some shops. The Predators Stanley Cup odds have also changed from 35 to 1 to 20 to 1. So I think when we see the regular season points totals come out at sports books, the Predators are going to be sitting around 100 points or better, based on their current Stanley Cup odds. So I'm really happy with what Nashville did, given that they were really close in their first round series versus the Vancouver Canucks. They locked up Saros for the long term. He's been very consistent. Had a bit of a down year this past year, but adding Stamkos and Marchessault and to a lesser extent Shea to the mix, and we can't forget that they also um, um, have a lot to work with already. So I really like with what the Predators did. However, while Stamkos works for Nashville, it was probably a wise move for the Lightning to move on from the 34-year-old. They probably could have handled it better, I guess. I think everybody's kind of on the same page on that one, including Steven Stamkos, who seems to be holding a little bit of bitterness, and you can't blame him for that. Trading Mikhail Sergachev was also probably a wise move. I mean, Sergachev coming off that brutal leg break, he played limited minutes in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I still think he's a quality player, and I think Utah got a good player there. For the most part, I think the Lightning have done very well here, setting themselves up for the long term. Not so sure about the short term, even though they did sign the best player available in free agency, Jake Gensel. I'm not really sure they're going to be better off for it in the short term. And the betting market isn't either. Their odds have remained pretty much unchanged across the board, following these transactions. So not really sure that the Lightning are going to be better off for it in the short term, but it does look like the Carolina Hurricanes are kind of worse off in the short term. They gave up a lot of assets to acquire Jake Gensel at the trade deadline. They had to say goodbye to him for nothing, really. They did trade his rights, but gave up a lot to get him. And they also had to say goodbye to Teravainen, Pesci, Shea, and Nosen. They did sign defensemen Shane Gostisbehere and Sean Walker as replacements, but the betting odds suggest that the New Jersey Devils are actually now the best team in the Metropolitan Division. They've got the best odds at most sports books to win the division, and I think a lot of people have to remember that New Jersey was the favorite to win the Metropolitan Division at a lot of shops heading into last season. They were supposed to be better than a 100-point team in 2023-24 before a number of things kind of derailed their season. But of course, the moves that they made, picking up Pesci in free agency, adding Brendan Dillon, and of course the trade to pick up Jacob Markstrom earlier or later in June, the Devils have definitely positioned themselves as a team that's ready to bounce back. With that said, I think the hierarchy of the Eastern Conference is relatively unchanged. You would have looked at the Boston Bruins and of course the Washington Capitals as teams that maybe might take a step back, but both Boston and Washington have filled out their rosters with some quality players. Say what you want about Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, from the perspective of the contract, the money. But the Bruins are a better team right now than they were when they were eliminated by the Florida Panthers in the second round of the playoffs. Same goes for the Washington Capitals. They landed Pierre-Luc Dubois earlier this summer, of course, in the trade with the Los Angeles Kings for Darcy Kemper. And they recently landed Jacob Chikrin, Andrew Mangiapane, and a few others to bolster their roster. Not quite sure if it's the right direction given where their core is at, but make no question about it, the team has added some talent to the roster and should be a bit more competitive next season as a result. And of course, I think Jake would probably kill me if we didn't touch on an honorable mention here. The Montreal Canadiens, according to report, GM Kent Hughes tried to sign an impact player like Jonathan Marchessault, which would have been a nice story, being a Quebec native and everything. But in the end, he opted to sign his budding superstar to a long-term extension. Juraj Slavkovsky is in Montreal to stay with his 8-year contract extension worth 7.6 million a year. He's set to stay with the Montreal Canadiens for the next 9 seasons. Personally, I think this is a great deal for Montreal, even if he doesn't live up to the contract in year one. Very good chance that the former number one overall pick will make his GM look like a genius in the years to follow. He finished with 20 goals, 30 assists in all 82 games while playing all 82 games last season. He's not going to turn 21 until March of next year. I think the future is very bright here, and it's encouraging to know that the GM, is aggressive enough to go after a player like Marchessault, but sensible enough not to make a bad deal given where they are at in the rebuild. Jake, how do you see this thing? You must be pretty happy with that deal.
Yeah, really happy. I mean, I think fans of the Habs, or people who follow the Habs pretty closely, know that this is likely a slam dunk for Kent Hughes and the Habs. People who don't follow as close, this is a bit of a head scratcher for them. It wasn't long ago, maybe about a year ago, that Slavkovsky had that sort of bust word, floating about around him, but then quickly turned it around with this last season. And I did a little research, I did a little digging around just to sort of, add a little bit more context. Oh, my camera stopped. I'll just,
What were you saying, Jake?
sorry, my camera stopped there, but I'll continue talking with with just you on camera. But yeah, I did a little digging around, and only 41 forwards had 50 between 50 and 60 points last year. Slavkovsky's by far the youngest one. And
Yeah.
it's the 66th best season from a 19-year-old in NHL history. 66 may sound like a big number, but when you compare it to the wide history of the NHL, it's pretty impressive. Guys that are tied with him with 50 points at 19 are guys like Bobby Hull, Jerome McGinley, and Brendan Shanahan. So, and as you said, 9 more years, he's just turning 20. You're basically buying what is thought to be the best years of a forward's career, between
Yep.
25 and 30 years old. So I really think that this deal could turn into quite a steal in the short term, and especially in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Montreal definitely a winner in my book for testing the waters on certain players, but ultimately just deciding to lock up a player that's going to be a big part of their rebuild going forward. So I mean, and it's a gamble for sure, but it's definitely, I think, a gamble with a lot of positive expected value, and Slavkovsky could very well live up to the contract in the first year when the deal kicks in following next season, because he showed a big improvement in the 2023-24 season. But that pretty much does it for today's show. The NHL schedule, the regular season schedule, was just released yesterday at noon. Some teams released the schedule in a let's just say a usable format, while others did not, only in some sort of like PDF image. But yeah, it's something that it'll take a little bit to cobble together here. But once I get the NHL schedule together, can start making doing some preliminary projections here. I obviously the roster still have to fill out quite a bit more before we can finalize anything heading into next season. But with the futures markets being populated earlier than ever, we've got division odds, etc., up across the industry. Some sports books like FanDuel Sportsbook, for instance, even has make miss playoffs already up. So yeah, it won't take long to get into the swing of things as far as handicapping the 2024-25 NHL season. We will have some more off-season content throughout the summer, but I'm going to take a little bit of time off and escape the day-to-day grind of the hockey media life cycle. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, looking forward to getting back chatting with all of you. It was a fun season. I appreciate all of you joining more often than not, because I know a lot of the same faces tagged along throughout the season. I appreciate everybody new that came aboard throughout the season, and hope to see you in a couple of weeks with some more off-season content. But until then, good luck with whatever you're betting on this summer, whether it be baseball, the Olympics, or the CFL even. You can check out a lot of more great sports betting content over at CanadaSportsBetting.ca. Of course, we've got the Copa America tournament going on right now, and there's a lot of coverage over there with that. So yeah, check it out, CanadaSportsBetting.ca. I will be back later this month, and until then, take care.